Hi YouTubers and film fans, Russell Exploitation here. I'm going to do a series of reviews for some films I really love, which are the Amicus films. I'm going to do today The Beast Must Die, but I'll probably do some more in the coming days and weeks and that, because I'm on a bit of an Amicus trip at the moment, so I just want to talk about some of the films that I've watched and bought really. So I'm going to start off with The Beast Must Die. Now Amicus, if you don't know, were a company that sort of rivaled Hammer Horror in the 60s and 70s. Whereas Hammer was an English company, Amicus were really an American company run by a couple of individuals called Milton Subotsky and Max Rosenberg. But they made most of their films in the UK, utilising obviously British crews and British casts. So people think that they're an English company, but they really are American. But anyway, Hammer, they set their stall out slightly different to Hammer, whereas Hammer made period pieces, sort of gothic chillers and all the rest of it, and that, like the Dracula films and Frankenstein and whatever. Amicus sort of cut themselves a different piece of turf really. They thought, well, we'll make all our films contemporary. They did make, I think, one film that was a period piece, which was And the Screaming Starts. But most of their films, large majority of their films, were all contemporary pieces. By contemporary, I mean 1960s and 70s when the films were made. So most of Amicus's films were anthology films, but they did venture into making some regular movies. They made The Land That Time Forgot, At the Earth's Core in the mid to late 70s, and they were more fantasy films, but they did make a few horror films as well like that. So one of them is The Beast Must Die, which is this kind of really bizarre werewolf film starring Peter Cushing. Now, this was made in 1974, and so it was a long time before American Werewolf and The Howling and whatever. And the werewolf, as depicted in this, is not even really the kind of Lon Chaney Jr. Wolfman type of werewolf. It is really just kind of a shaggy dog. But I'll get into that in a minute. But it's kind of a bizarre film, this really, because it takes... I mean, this was made in 74, so this was kind of made in the area of blaxploitation. And bizarrely, this film has a kind of blaxploitation vibe thrown into the mix. And it's really bizarre. As the film starts, you see this black guy who's sort of being chased through this sort of woodland, and there's loads of security or soldiers after him with guns, and there's a helicopter flying over above, and it has this really funky sort of Shaft-like soundtrack, which kind of really threw me off guard, which is not something you expect in an Amicus film or a Hammer film or whatever. And lots of sort of wah-wah guitar and everything, and I had to sort of double check the credits to actually see if I was watching the correct film, but that is indeed how it starts and that. And the guy in question is played by an actor called Calvin Lockhart, and the scene starts, as I said, the scene starts with him being sort of chased through this woodland and the grounds of this house, and we find out that it's actually his house, and he's installing a new security system, and he wants to sort of check to see how foolproof it is, and all the people that are chasing him are basically his own security crew. So then the story moves on after that, and we find that this guy has invited 5 guests to his house for a weekend, and his intention is made pretty quickly that he's invited all these people because he knows that one of them is a werewolf, and he wants to expose the one that is the werewolf. And there is three nights of a full moon, so within those 3 nights he hopes to catch the werewolf and kill it. Now, the film has a kind of Agatha Christie vibe really because of this. It's kind of a murder mystery, but with sort of, you know, the werewolf aspect thrown in. So it's quite a clever plot device really. This film is it's a hard one to review really, because most people probably will review werewolf films and they'll think of like the Spanish werewolf films or like the American Werewolf and London and the Howling and that. So if you're expecting anything like that, then obviously this probably won't be for you. But if you want something a bit more low key and you like the old sort of 70s and 60s Hammer type films, then and you know you haven't raised your expectations too high, then hopefully you'll find something to like in this. I mean, I really enjoyed it. Some people don't like this film; they think it's really slow and a bit plodding. I mean, it's only an hour and 28 minutes, so by the time you get that sort of beginning scene out of the way, there's only really like an hour and 20 minutes of the plot, so it certainly doesn't outstay its welcome. I quite like the murder mystery vibe. The 5 guests are all very different. One of them is actually played by young Michael Gambon, who makes an appearance here. Obviously Peter Cushing is the other one, and despite Peter Cushing's top billing, disappointingly he really doesn't get much to do in this film. I suppose they needed him to sell the film, really. That's why they put his name up front. But this is really Calvin Lockhart's film. I mean, he's in pretty much every scene, really. So Cushing does one of his sort of foreign accents, and he's kind of a werewolf expert in the film. And but he's sadly is underutilised a little bit, which was a bit of a disappointment, really. But anyway, the cast is all pretty solid and good. Charles Gray is another one of the guests. You might remember Charles Gray from a couple of the James Bond films. He was in You Only Live Twice and Diamonds Are Forever. And yeah, there's this weird sort of blaxploitation aspect that sort of runs through it, and there's a funny scene where Calvin Lockhart is chasing the person has changed. We don't know who's changed into the werewolf, but the werewolf has escaped the confines of the house, and Calvin Lockhart goes chasing after him and that, and he has this sort of leather catsuit on with his big gun, and it's quite funny really, because it just seems kind of really out of place in this movie. But that's why I like it, because it's so sort of offbeat. Now the werewolf itself is a little bit embarrassing. Fortunately, the director doesn't linger on the werewolf too much. I mean, when you see the werewolf chasing through the grounds, it's very quick, and you see these sort of quick cuts, and when you get to sort of close-up shots, they cut very quickly. So you don't really get to see too much of it, fortunately, because I think that they probably realised that even if it looked pretty crappy basically, so they didn't want you to see it too much, and it looks like they've just literally dressed up this Alsatian or German Shepherd or something with this. They kind of adorned its back with this sort of shaggy, was kind of a shaggy wool type thing around its head, and that. It as I say, it's a little bit silly really. I mean, I don't know why they just didn't go for a kind of Wolfman type aspect really, but there you go. But as I say, you don't really see it too much, so it isn't too much of a isn't too disheartening really, but anyway, I mean, the special effects in a lot of these films were, they don't hold up, but that's not why we watch them, is it? So but it moves along at a good pace, I thought. There's a really funny scene near the end where you actually get a chance to guess the werewolf. The film actually stops, and this voice comes over with a clock on the screen, and it says, have you made up your mind who is the werewolf? You have 30 seconds to decide. And the clock counts down, and which I quite liked. It's a bit cheesy, but I thought it was quite funny. And then after that, obviously you make up your mind who you think is the werewolf, and then just after that, the actual person who's the werewolf is exposed. So I'm not going to give that away, obviously, but yeah, there's some nice action, couple of good action scenes in it. There's a sort of helicopter blows up and some shooting and stuff. As I say, some people have called this film a bit slow. I don't think it was slow at all, but it's such a bizarre film because, as I say, it mixes this sort of Agatha Christie plot with the werewolf aspect, with a sort of slight blaxploitation element that I think really is quite wonderful. It's really worth checking out if you haven't seen it. You can get it on a UK DVD. There's a few DVDs, I believe, of this. There was an Anchor Bay one a few years ago, but the picture quality wasn't that good. I think there was a US release as well. I'm not sure if that's an Anchor Bay release, I can't remember now, but this is the UK Optimum release that's came out a couple of years ago. Picture quality is really good, but disappointingly it's only pan and scan 4:3. It's not widescreen, which was a real bummer basically, but the picture quality is very, very good. I believe much better than some of the previous releases, which I've not seen. So although some of them, I think some of the previous releases were in widescreen, you know, it's a bit of a trade-off really. If you want widescreen, get the early releases, but the picture quality won't be as good. So personally, it didn't really bother me too much, but it would have been nice if it was widescreen. There's no features on here at all. It's a 15 certificate. Why it's 15? I can only assume there's a scene where somebody who, shall I say, works in the house gets their eye sort of gouged out by the werewolf, and you don't see the eye getting gouged out, but you can't see the aftermath. And I can only assume it's that scene that gave this a 15 certificate, because there's really nothing else in it that would be unsuitable for kids. I think in Australia, this film is actually only a PG, so that goes to show you how ratings boards and can differ quite a lot between country to country. But yeah, I mean, I would say kids, a 12-year-old kid wouldn't find anything particularly scary in this at all. But some of these old Hammer films have been sort of downgraded certificate-wise, obviously, because they're quite tame compared to modern day standards. But if you love Peter Cushing, and I think we all do, I mean, Peter Cushing can read the phone book, in my opinion, and I'd still watch it. The guy's a genius in my eyes. But he made, as well as making loads of films for Hammer, he did make quite a few films for Amicus as well. And but I think this is one of the last films they made, Amicus, I think, before the company folded. So yeah, check it out. It's on the UK Optimum label. There are other editions that you can get. It's a fun little werewolf film. If you like your Hammer films, you'll probably like this. Groovy little soundtrack as well with it. What else can I say? You can get it pretty cheap now. Amicus, the studio that dripped blood, because that's a little homage to, they did a film called The House That Dripped Blood, which is an anthology film that they did, which I might review at some point. But yeah, check this one out. It's a very good release. Gives you a little close up there of the guests. Make up your mind, who is the werewolf? So if you like your little murder mysteries with a twist and something different, take it around your mum's house and say, look mum, I've got a nice little murder mystery here for you. See, you can guess who the werewolf is. I think she'll like it. So anyway, that's it for me for now. If you want to make a comment, then please do. And I'll be back soon with some more stuff. So take care and hope you're alright.